Okay, good evening everybody and welcome to this evening's online talk. My name is Harriet and I work for the Leicestershire Rutland Wildlife Trust, and I am joined this evening by Abby Mustard, who is our Osprey Information Officer. And she will be taking us down a trip down memory lane and going back over the history of the Rutland Osprey Project, as we are celebrating our 25th year of the project this year, so very exciting. Abby will be starting the talk in a second. If you could pop any questions you have for Abby during the talk in the Q&A box at the bottom, and then we will go through as many questions as we have time for at the end of the talk. And we are delighted to be able to offer these talks for free, but if you would like to offer a donation to support the work we do to protect wildlife like the Rutland Ospreys and help cover the running costs of these talks, that would be greatly appreciated. You can go to our website at www.lrwt.org.uk/donate to make a donation. Okay, without further ado, I shall now pass over to Abby.
Thanks very much, Harriet, and thank you for joining us tonight for tonight's talk. I'll just share my screen. There we go. So tonight I'm going to be taking a look at the success of the Rutland Osprey Project and hopefully sharing some new information with you. Ospreys are one of the UK's biggest birds of prey. It's the third biggest after the golden eagle and white-tailed eagle, and they're amazing predators. They only hunt and feed on fish, and they're perfectly adapted for life like this. Right, so Ospreys were once very widespread in the UK and also across Europe. And ospreys have what we call a cosmopolitan distribution, which means they can be found on all continents except for Antarctica. It's a bit too cold there. Ospreys are only 1 in 6 land bird species that have a cosmopolitan distribution, and is second most widely distributed bird of prey after the peregrine falcon. As I said, ospreys were once very widespread, and they have been widely referenced in literature, for example, in Shakespeare's Coriolanus. But unfortunately, due to heavy persecution, they became extinct as a breeding bird in England in 1847, and later it's thought that they became extinct in Scotland in 1916. And this is a result of many different causes, and like many of our other birds of prey, they were heavily persecuted by us. They were shot, they were killed for because of competition with fishermen, as they were seen to pose a threat to fish stocks. They were routinely shot by gamekeepers too, and also sportsmen. They also, particularly in the Victorian era, Victorians used to collect their eggs, which caused population decline. And they, with improvements to agriculture, their habitat declined as well. So, unfortunately, like many of our birds of prey, they've been seen as a threat. Therefore, their population has been affected until they became extinct. However, it's not all bad news, because as many of you may know, they started to return to the UK, to Scotland in the 1950s. Ospreys, though they were extinct as a breeding bird, they were still regularly seen during their spring and autumn migrations in the UK, in Scotland, en route to their wintering rounds to and from countries further north, such as Scandinavia. And it was thought that in that the pair that successfully bred for the first time in Scotland in 1954 were a pair that originated in Scandinavia, and they first successfully bred at Lochgarten up in Scotland. Over the course of the years, the population of ospreys in Scotland slowly increased. However, initially the population increase was slow due to the use of a pesticide called DDT, and the DDT caused thinning of the eggshells, and that unfortunately therefore lowered the survival rate of those eggs and therefore chicks. So initially their population increase in Scotland was quite slow. In 1976 there were 14 pairs in Scotland, which shows that the increase was happening, but it was fairly slow. But in 1991, this had increased to 71 breeding pairs in Scotland. And further on in 2000, there were in the year 2000 there were about 150 pairs. And today Scotland is still the stronghold for Ospreys. Today you can go and visit other places in England, such as here in Rutland or up in Kielder. You know, they're starting to spread elsewhere, but Scotland is still the stronghold for them. So with the construction of Rutland Water in the 1970s, it was the first time that a nature reserve had also been built alongside this construction. A third of the reservoir is nature reserve, and it covers 1,000 acres of land, which is managed by the Leicestershire Rutland Wildlife Trust in partnership with Anglian Water. It's today known as a SSSI, Special Scientific Interest, Special Protection Area, Ramsar designated wetland site. But probably most importantly for us, it's also a perfect place for ospreys. Osprey, like with Scotland, once the creation of the reservoir was built, once the reservoir was built, there were still sightings of ospreys, and in notes on the Birds of Nature, which was written by Charles Haynes, they were described as an occasional spring visitor to burley and Exton fish ponds before they were flooded, and then sightings increased. In 1976, after the construction of the reservoir was finished, it was recorded in the spring that there were 11 osprey sightings, and this followed through for following years. In 1992, we had 20 sightings in the spring and 20 reports. Numbers fluctuated throughout the years, but the sightings were still there, and there was potential for Rutland Water Nature Reserve, with it being a wetland habitat, with it being stocked with plenty of fish for the ospreys. It was a perfect habitat, and it definitely had potential for a population of ospreys here. And in 1994, a male and a female osprey stayed for the entire season, and there was hope that the following year they would return and breed. However, it didn't quite work out like that, because the male returned in 1995, but unfortunately the female didn't. And it just showed what a challenge we had if we were to reintroduce ospreys to the nature reserve. We'd put up nesting platforms, we'd put up artificial perches as well, with the hope that it would attract ospreys on passage. But because ospreys are renowned for being site faithful and returning quite close to the natal ground, it proved a bit more of a challenge. So without any human interference, it was estimated that it will be about 100 years before ospreys were once again breeding in central England, naturally recolonising the area. So we thought it was going to be a long time, and they were extinct. They weren't extinct due to natural causes. They were made extinct because of us, because of people. And despite us having put up these nesting platforms and perches around the nature reserve, no successful breeding attempts were made. So in 1995, talks began with the aim of reintroducing a population of breeding ospreys to the Rutland Water. So in order for this to happen, in order for this to happen, the project ended up being a translocation project, which meant that over the course of 6 years, osprey chicks were taken from Scottish nest sites and released here in Rutland. In order for the reintroduction to work and to overcome ospreys being site faithful, we had to translocate them as chicks. We couldn't translocate them as adults like with the Red Kite reintroduction project due to them being site faithful. We knew that there was, potential for this translocation project to work because places elsewhere in the world had been successful, particularly in the US. A translocation project occurred in Minnesota, which started in 1984 and ended in 1993, where 119 chicks were released at 5 locations. Here in Minnesota, the first nesting attempt was in 1986, and the first successful attempt was in 1988, where 2 chicks fledged. So by looking at the project over in Minnesota and other projects in the US, there was definitely potential for a translocation project to work here in Rutland. And the team who founded the Osprey Project, Tim Appleton and Helen McIntyre, they all did a lot of research, and Roy Dennis, Tim and Roy went out to America and kind of studied the projects out there. So we had the best chance for our project to be successful. So in 1996, licenses were granted to translocate chicks from Scotland, and these chicks were collected from, initially the first year, 8 chicks were released in 1996, and this initial year it was agreed that the smallest chick from a brood of 3 would be removed, and the age of the chicks here ranged from between 30 days to 40 days old. So, but unfortunately, when the chicks had arrived, it was a bit of a hands-on experience. The team of staff and volunteers had to monitor the juveniles and the chicks, recorded their daily food intake and activity. So that meant every wing flap was recorded, every stretch was recorded, every scratch was recorded, and also bowel movement as well. And this helped them build up a picture of the health and development in each individual chick. And because it wasn't always possible to read the leg rings due to the cameras being basic CCTV black and white, it was quite tricky for them to read the ring numbers. They also had to familiarise themselves with the birds themselves, identifying them through different markings. And actually, one of the ways that we can identify ospreys and distinguish between 2 is by looking at their underside of their wings. Ospreys have mainly white underwings, but like little brown spots underneath, and these markings are unique to each osprey. So that's one of the ways that they would that we can tell between 2 different birds. Unfortunately, or fortunately, this monitoring proved important, as in 1996, 2 of the juveniles that were brought down, they showed signs of poor health, and this was judging from the condition of their plumage and lack of appetite. And if the team hadn't have been so on it with the monitoring, if they hadn't been so taking as much detail from it, perhaps they wouldn't have known until it was too late. From the 8 chicks that were translocated in 1996, unfortunately 4 of them didn't survive due to salmonella being a contributing factor. It wasn't the sole factor. We're not sure what the other factors were, but we know that salmonella had played a part. The source of the infection was unclear, although looking at the history of the donor nests in Scotland, it revealed there had been a higher than expected number of dead young in one particular nest. So because of knowing that, no further chicks were removed from that nest in the future years of the translocation project. So from the first year being a bit of a trial run, the following years, from 1997 to 2001, Natural England and Scottish Natural, but it was decided and agreed that the chicks removed from the nest in the future would be the strong and healthy chicks, as the adult ospreys stood the best chance of raising those chicks that were perhaps younger and a little bit weaker. So the younger chicks would stand a better chance of survival. So initially, in the first year, it was agreed that we would remove chicks from brood of 3 and only broods of 3. However, from 1997, it was agreed that we could take chicks from broods of 2, which widened the choice of areas. It's a very small time frame that the team were able to collect them in, as the chicks, ideally had to be about 6 weeks old. Once they were brought down to Rutland, they were held in release pens just like this one, and they were fed. We tried to minimise human contact and fed carefully through little holes in the pen. And when it was time for them to be released, we over the years the team realised and learned that the more helicoptering that they do, so when the chicks are flapping the wings and lifting themselves up for short periods of time, they were getting very close to being ready to fledge, and at that point they were ready, for the doors to open and for them to have the opportunity to fly free and fledge. So between 1996 and 2001, 64 chicks in total were translocated. In 2005, a further 11 chicks were translocated, and these 11 chicks were females, as we wanted to redress a gender imbalance. So in total, 75 chicks were translocated over the years. So juvenile ospreys tend to spend about 18 months to 2 years in their wintering grounds, whether that's along the west coast of Africa and countries like Gambia or Senegal, or along, even some are staying in southern Spain. I don't blame them, southern Spain's lovely. So we weren't expecting the first juveniles or first ospreys to return until 1999. And in 1999, we had the first 2 ospreys return, and they were both males. The first was male 0897, and the second was one of our most famous birds, 0397, aka Mr. Rutland. And they both were one of the original chicks to be translocated in 1997, so second year of the translocation. In the year 2000, these 2 birds did return again, and 03 tried to claim a territory around Lax Hill, which is one of the places where the original release pens and releasing sites were. But unfortunately for 03, he was displaced, and 0897 took over that territory and managed to attract a passing female who was a metal ringed female, so possibly of Scottish origin. However, that year in 2000, we didn't have a successful breeding attempt. However, that all changed in 2001 when a pair of ospreys bred in 2001. So the successful pairing was 0397 with an unringed female, and it was a little bit of a bit of drama going on because this female went between 03 and she went between 08 as well. So potentially it could have been 08 or 03 that she paired up with. But it turned out that 0397 was the better suitor for her. And although she laid 3 eggs, only 1 chick was successfully raised through to fledging, which is brilliant. Okay, so 0397 went on to become one of our most important birds and has an incredibly strong legacy. He, over the course of his 18 years, he raised 32 chicks, which nicely includes male 3311 from the Mountain Bay nest. And by the looks of it, 3311 is following in his dad's footsteps. So in 2001, it was a really exciting year. We had the first successful breeding attempt, however, from a translocated male. However, in 2005, the potential second milestone was reached because the first Rutland-Born Osprey successfully bred for the first time. Sorry, I got the date wrong, year wrong, in 2007. And this female was female 5N04, who is still in our population today and is our oldest bird in the Rutland population at the moment. And she paired up with 0897, so he was the one of the first. He was the translocated male that returned in 1999 with 03, and they successfully raised 2 chicks at the Mountain Bay nest in 2007. Unfortunately, in 2008, they had a failed breeding attempt at the Mountain Bay nest and moved on elsewhere. But it was really exciting because this particular bird, 5N, was the first Rutland-Born Osprey to breed. So it was fantastic news for us. 5N was a daughter of 0397, so very good genes, very good important bird as well. Fast forward to today, from 03 breeding and 5N breeding, we've now seen 188 chicks successfully fledge from nest sites across the Rutland area. And up until 2017, we have welcomed 42 of these back as adults. Now, 42, this number includes those that have decided to reside elsewhere in the UK or abroad. But that's really brilliant for us, really good news. As I said, we've had 42 of the chicks that had fledged. We've seen back in the UK or elsewhere, but sometimes they don't come back to Rutland, and I'll go into further detail a bit later on about a bit more of the statistics behind it. But these birds these birds that stray further away tend to be females. Female ospreys tend to follow the rule of being site faithful less strictly than the males. However, most of our females and most of the birds that have turned up elsewhere and bred elsewhere have been in Wales. However, the first bird that actually did turn up, it wasn't female, it was a male. He was male 1198, and he was one of the translocated chicks that were released. It was released in 1998, and he was a very important bird as he was breeding. He was part of the first breeding pair in Wales for over 150 years in 2004, and he was breeding at the Glasgow site up until 2014. So very important bird. And then going on to females, we've had female 5F12, who's been breeding at Glasgow since last year. And also we've got breeding females over at Dovey. So female 0308 She was the breeding female at Dovey between 2011 and 2012. And also 3J13 as well. From 2018, she's been the breeding female at Dovey. And more recently at Lynn-Brennig, with last female 2410 was a Rutland Fledged bird, and she first bred in 2018 at Lynn-Brennig. However, it wasn't the first time that she was seen back in the UK. She was first seen at the Dovey site in 2013. So Dovey and Gravlin and Lynn-Brennig, very important sites for ospreys in Wales. And also we've got one of our females at Poole Harbour, CJ7. So Poole Harbour is another area where they are reintroducing ospreys through a translocation project. And one of our females, CJ7 has been residing there from 2017, since 2017. So hopefully it won't be long before she attracts a male. I know that one of our males, 3AB, tends to spend the spring and summer down in Hampshire at Fish Lake Meadows. So hopefully they'll cross the gap, and hopefully, you know, they'll have a breeding pair down at Poole Harbour. But it's definitely a project to watch. And I believe this year CJ7, although she's not paired up with a male, she's laid 3 unfertilized eggs, which is really interesting. But one of our ospreys, a male, has decided to go spread the wings even further. And this is male ST15. So he fledged from the Mountain Bay nest in 2015. He was one of the first chicks that 3311 raised with Maya. And his brother S1 was one of our satellite track birds too, who sadly S1 disappeared last year after making a really interesting trip to the Netherlands and to Germany. But that's a story for another day. But S2 has been seen at the Biesbosch National Park in the Netherlands since 2007, and he bred for the first time last year, and he raised 3 chicks. So he's paired up with a German ringed female. And this year, although their nest had been blown down, this year he's managed to rebuild his nest and is currently sitting on eggs at the moment. So we look forward to hearing all the news there. So, excuse me, 2 of these birds that have gone on to breed elsewhere have fledged from the Mountain Bay nest, which is great news for all of us. We get to see them again after watching them on the webcam. So obviously, as I mentioned, S215 was one of them, and also female 3J13 breeding at Dovey. So really, really exciting stuff. Oop, and that's where S2 has been breeding. So 25 years after the translocation project began in 1996, we now have what we call a self-sustaining population here in Rutland, which means no further interference, no more reintroductions, no more translocations are needed. We've got a stable population, and we have up to 10 breeding pairs each year, which is expected in the original feasibility report written by Roy Dennis. It was he predicted that the area could support 8 to 10 breeding pairs. So we have hit that number now. There is a potential for them to spread further, but we've reached the aim of the project, which is fantastic news. Since 2001, we've had 188 chicks successfully fledged, and hopefully this year we may see the 200th chick. Now, at the moment, we don't know how many. Obviously, we know that 2 chicks have so far hatched at the Mountain Bay nest, but we're not sure about what's happening on the other nest sites. We're monitoring them, but we won't be able to know until later on in the season. So we'll keep our fingers crossed for the 200th chick. And each year we welcome around about 26 adults back to the area. Now, some of these birds are obviously breeding birds, but we've got quite a few bachelors in the area. So hopefully they'll be starting to attract unringed females or females from elsewhere in the UK, perhaps in Scotland. So fingers crossed to that. So the project itself, it's been such a pioneering conservation project, and we are all really excited for what the future brings and see what the next 25 years brings. So hopefully we'll start to see ospreys spread further afield into neighbouring counties and help bring ospreys back to our skies, and once again a common sight in the UK. They're meant to be here, so hopefully in a few years' time we'll start to see a few more of them. So this table summarises the productivity of the project since the first Rutland-Born chick fledged in 2001. The first column is the year, second column is the number of breeding pairs we've had in that year, and the next three columns show the makeup of the breeding pairs. So individuals that have, adults that have been translocated, those which are of unringed or Scottish origin, or indeed those that have those adults that form a breeding pair that have fledged from Rutland themselves. So this table shows that in the early years, the breeding pairs mainly and understandably comprise of translocated individuals with the help of a few unringed or Scottish birds too. Over the past 10 years or so, this has started to change, so that the breeding pairs are now mainly comprised of Rutland fledged birds, which is really good, and it shows that the project has been a success. 43 individuals that have fledged from Rutland have survived and returned here, either here or elsewhere. So that's shown in the last column of the number of young that have survived. So all that shows all really good stuff. Obviously 2019 and 2020, even 2018, we don't know yet because of the time that the juveniles spend in their wintering grounds. So hopefully within the next couple of years we'll start to see some of those back. So this particular table shows the dispersal of the Rutland Ospreys, and it particularly shows that female ospreys are more likely to breed further away from the natal site than the males. They have, as I mentioned earlier, we've got 5 females that have bred or are breeding elsewhere in the UK. So female ospreys have an average dispersal rate of dispersal distance of 81 kilometres in comparison to the male counterparts, which are only 34 kilometres away. Obviously, this S215 is an exception. He is net breeding 387 kilometres away, which is further away than any of our females. But we always like a rule breaker. Also, the second point that we can draw from this is that females tend to breed for the first time when they are younger. So for females, their average age at first breeding is 3.74 years old in comparison to males who average at 5 years old before they breed for the first time. So these two tables show the origin of male and female chicks that have been produced here at Rutland, and these are separated into those produced by females and male adults of different origins. So the first column is the origin of the female adults, so those that are either translocated originally, fledged from Rutland, or of another origin, or unringed. And same for the males, and the number of chicks produced by Rutland fledged birds now exceeds the number of chicks produced by Scottish or unringed individuals. So you can see that 94 94 chicks have been produced from Rutland fledged females, and 137 chicks have been produced from male adults that are fledged from Rutland originally, in comparison to the translocated or those of Scottish origin. And actually it's interesting that all the breeding males here at Rutland have either been translocated or have fledged from Rutland. We don't have any males from elsewhere in the country, unlike females. So usually we estimate that under 30% of juveniles will successfully return a couple of years later after their first migration. This is due to a high number of threats that they face either on their migration or in their wintering grounds. It's a pretty intense time. They don't know where they're going. They've got to fish for themselves for the first time when they first leave. So there's a lot going against the juvenile ospreys. But Rutland birds seem to be doing really well, and they seem to have a higher return rate than what is usually stated. We have an average return rate of 31.6% of our chicks that have fledged from Rutland, which is really, really good news. And even those that the first table includes those that have that are now residing elsewhere, so in the Netherlands and Wales or at Paul Harbour. And the second table below are those birds that are discount the birds that are now resident elsewhere. So even the second table, we're well within the average number of chicks that have returned. So that's really exciting news. And Mountain Bay Ospreys seem to have a really good success rate and return rate for their juveniles. So Maya and 3311 are doing a really good job, and hopefully we'll start to see some of their chicks come back this year. I think I probably should mention this. All these tables have been put together by Tim McCrill, who has played a very big part of the project in the past and still does. So thank you to him for providing me with the information. Where are we? Right, so it's the Rutland Osprey Project. From what I've been speaking about, it's been a success overall, and it's such a good conservation story. It's a positive story. It shows that human intervention through reintroduction projects can be success. And even now, when we've got a looming ecological crisis, we've got to take advantage of all the methods and all the tools that we can use to support the UK ecology and ecosystem. So the Rutland Osprey Project just goes to show that this is possible, and I'm very proud to be part of that. It hasn't been without its challenges, but we've only got through due to the dedication of all the staff and the whole team that have been involved over the past 25 years. The amazing team of volunteers that we still have. Without our volunteers, we wouldn't be able to function. They spend days in the Wade Scrape Hide, monitoring the ospreys, engaging with our visitors, and I think they're the vital part of. Personally, I think they're the vital part of the project and why we've been had such a success. Because it's, but also to all of you that are supporting us. Without your support, we wouldn't be able to function either. There wouldn't be Osprey Project here. So thank you ever so much to all of you who have supported us over the past few years. For me personally, the past year when we launched our webcam appeal, we wouldn't have got a brand new webcam system without all of you. So thank you for that. And a group of people that I also need to mention on here are the landowners. Without the landowners, we wouldn't be able to, the landowners have, we've been able to work with the landowners to put up artificial nesting platforms elsewhere around the county, and without their support and without their input, we wouldn't have the number of breeding pairs that we have today. So they're really these, and of course the Ospreys themselves. There would be no Osprey project without the Ospreys, and it's because of their resilience as a bird that they've, we are where we are today. So the future of the Osprey project, now we've got to a point where we've got a self-sustaining population, we'll continue to continue with the conservation work. We'll continue to work with landowners, other organisations, other projects to help continue the recovery of the Osprey population, and also to create awareness of Osprey conservation in the UK, which these two go hand in hand. All of them do, and continue with our. I think the main thing for us at the moment is to continue with our engagement and pod programs. So really looking forward to the next 25 years, and hopefully we'll start to see Ospreys further afield very soon. So thank you all for listening. Hope you've enjoyed it, and I think we've now got time for some questions.
Thanks, Abby. Well done.
Thank you.
Can relax now. Okay, yeah, we've got quite a few questions, so let's have a look. Okay, we've got one here. Do you know, are there any further Osprey reintroductions planned anywhere else in the UK?
There's a potential one in Suffolk that's going ahead. At this point in time, if you're probably interested in more information from that, I can direct you to Tim McCrill, who will be more than happy to answer any questions you have on that. And obviously the Poole Harbour Osprey project is continuing this year. So yeah, so there's definitely room for further translocation projects. But yeah, Tim McCrill would be the person to speak to about that.
Okay. What age can Ospreys live to?
So the oldest known Osprey in the UK was 25, and she was a female from Scotland. It depends on the crucial time for Ospreys is whether they'll return after their migration. So normally Ospreys average about 8 years old. However, we do see them much older. 0397 was 18, and 5N04, who was the first female to Rutland Sledge female to breed again, she's now 16. And Maya, of course, from Mountain Bay Nest, we don't know how old she is. She could be at least 13, 14. But she could be much older than what we know or guess.
They live a long, good life.
A long time.
Yeah. Okay. Was any monitoring done of the remaining chicks on the Scottish nests, especially when the younger, weaker ones were left? i.e., did they have at least as good, this complicated question, did they have at least as good or as better return or breeding rate as nests which did not have a chick removed for translocation?
Good question. I believe these nests were monitored to an extent. As to how much detail that monitoring went into, I'm not sure. Ospreys, if the chick was taken from a breed of 3, a brood of 2 that has successfully fledged from that Scottish nest site is still really good. Ospreys average a brood of 2 or 3 chicks, so all the translocation project was done on the basis that it wouldn't affect the population in Scotland, so everything was taken into consideration. The numbers were carefully monitored, so it wouldn't impact the Scottish population.
Okay. Okay, do you foresee any problems with too many unpaired males returning to Rutland, disrupting nesting pairs? And if so, would you consider translocating male chicks from Rutland to somewhere like Poole?
At the moment, after speaking to Tim McCrill and other my colleagues, don't really see a huge problem. There's plenty of artificial platforms, there's plenty of opportunities. At the moment, we've got 2 unringed females hanging about. So hopefully, providing there's empty territory for them, then hopefully it shouldn't, the current breeding pairs shouldn't be impacted too much.
Okay. Do the chicks try to return to the nests in which they were raised, or do they leave this to their parents?
A bit of both. Sometimes the chicks will naturally, they'll know the area, they know where they've fledged from, so they sometimes will come back and when they first return and have a look see what's going on. But it depends on where they on the behaviour of the adults of the pair that are already there. Yeah.
Okay. Somebody is asking if do you know any updates on the recent nest site destruction in Wales?
So unfortunately, that was a horrific event. It's a sad incident, one that we really hope doesn't happen again. All the updates are being posted on the Rutland Osprey Project Facebook page. We have offered the Lynn team our support and everything that we can. But if you want updates, I'd suggest checking out the Rutland Osprey Project social media pages because they'll have the most up-to-date information on it.
Yeah.
Yeah. A horrible event.
Yeah, really, really awful. Okay, how many years have Maya and 33 nested at Mountain Bay?
So Maya and 3311 as a pair have been successfully breeding since 2015, though they paired up in 2014. Maya originally arrived in Rutland in 2009, although she didn't breed that year, but she did breed in 2010 with a male 5R04. Maya has raised 29 chicks over the course of her breeding years, and that's excluding this year's brood. And 3311 has now raised 18 chicks. Again, that doesn't count this year. So yeah, they've been around a while.
Yeah, they've been busy.
Particularly Maya.
Yeah. Okay. What do the ospreys predominantly feed on at Rutland Water? So
ospreys are one of the only birds of prey to exclusively feed on fish. There's plenty of fish at Rutland Water. We tend to see 3311 bringing back trout, perch, roach, sometimes pike as well. So they're the main fish species that we see brought back to the Mountain Bay nest. But with Rutland Water being regularly stocked with trout is a staple for the Rutland Ospreys.
Okay, do ospreys build their own nests or mainly use the artificial ones?
So they'll use artificial ones. Ospreys, I think, are one of the most likely birds of prey to be able to adapt and live alongside us people and use artificial platforms and other perches. ironically, although we put up artificial nesting platforms at the very start of the project, the first O397 who bred for the first time in 2001, he actually built his own nest despite having nesting platforms elsewhere that he could use. So a bit of both, and you know, if it doesn't, ospreys can build a nest and breed at the same time. It's being seen with S215 over in the Netherlands, as his nest unfortunately got destroyed by a storm, but him and his mate have rebuilt it and are currently incubating. So yeah, bit of both.
Yeah. Okay, do you know what is the typical weight of an adult osprey?
Now it's testing me.
Knowledge now.
Probably about 4 kilograms ish, up to 4 kilograms they can weigh. Yeah.
Might have to check that one out. Okay, do the recent juveniles tend to migrate to southern Spain now, or is it more likely to Gambia or Senegal, or are we not sure?
Without having satellite trackers on all of the juveniles, we can't be sure. Certainly, 3 of last year's juveniles that fledged have been recorded and reported in Spain. However, we don't know whether they've moved on or stayed in Spain. So, you know, some will stick in Spain, others will continue across the Mediterranean and head into West Africa. So, a bit of both now. We're starting to realise, you know, we've always really thought and gone with that ospreys will always go to the west coast of Africa, but that's now changing, and even Portugal as well. They're staying for the winter.
Okay.
Why cross the Sahara Desert if you don't have to, eh?
Yeah, if you're perfectly good home in Portugal or Spain, then yeah. Do you know how many eggs would be the largest clutch possible?
So ospreys can lay up to 4 eggs. There's never been any more than 4 recorded. But on average, 4 is really good, and for the past couple of years, Maya and 33 have successfully raised 4 chicks. However, normally it's 2 or 3 chicks that they'll have.
Okay. Do we have any idea where unringed birds are likely to have come from, or would we not ever know that?
Without probably taking an educational guess, Scotland or further north in Scandinavia. As Scotland's got such a greater population of ospreys, not all of them are ringed. So yeah, probably mainly from Scotland. So we might have individuals from elsewhere. It's not impossible that others from other countries in Europe, you know, will come up here instead.
Okay. Oh, someone's saying that Blue 2AA is in Portugal.
Brilliant. Yeah,
so that's good news.
That's really good news. Thank you.
Someone's put in Wikipedia says osprey's weight is between 0.9 and 2.1 kilograms.
A bit of overweight osprey, so 4 kilograms then.
We can't always trust Wikipedia, so probably somewhere in between.
Yeah.
But thank you for that, Stuart, who found that out for us. Okay, we'll do one more question because we're almost through them all, I think. Okay, we've got a couple more. Do you know the average wingspan size?
So ospreys can have a wingspan of up to 1.8 meters. Female ospreys are can be up to 20% bigger than the males. So it ranges. But interestingly, in proportion, an osprey's wingspan is larger in proportion to their body size, which is really because they've got to have enough power and enough, strength in their wings to lift them out of the water. And with a fish whose, main priority is to swim deeper into the water, so they've got their wings are slightly longer than in proportion.
Okay. Is there a risk that brothers can mate with their sisters, or does this not happen?
There is always that risk of inbreeding. Some of our ospreys are perhaps a little too closer relation to each other. However, we haven't really seen this effect. We haven't really seen any effects, ill effects of this. It does happen. It happens with, probably many other species. But
yeah, I think that's just nature, isn't it? They're not quite the same as humans. Okay, we'll do one last question. Okay, Elaine is asking, I think you said the birds fledged from Manton Bay returned in good numbers. Do you think this is influenced by the female staying later in the season and giving the juveniles a good start?
It could definitely be an element of this. It's hard really to know the real reason, or whether it's more luck, whether the birds are being fed on average more, or whether the juveniles, are being fed on average more than those at other nest sites. I guess it's ideal, their nest site being on the water. 33 doesn't have very far to go, and will fish in front of the hide, so he really doesn't have any much distance that he has to travel to catch fish. So it could be a whole mix of different reasons, but Maya and 3311 are, or Maya and even 5R04, they were really good parents. So.
Yeah. Okay. Fantastic. All right. Well, thank you very much, Abby. Brilliant talk. Really great to have a look back at what a fantastic success story the Osprey Project has been, and what a brilliant 25 years we've had. And here's hoping that we get another good 25 years of breeding ospreys in Rutland. Thank you so much to everyone who's joined us tonight. We had a fantastic turnout. I think at one point we were up to about 120 participants. So it's really, really great to see so many people interested in our Rutland Ospreys and supporting the project. As I said at the beginning, if you would like to give us a donation, please head to our website. And we do have lots more talks coming up over the next few months. We've got some that are special Osprey talks to celebrate our anniversary. We've got, I can't remember what we've got coming up next now, but we do have, we've got one with Ken Davies, who is our Osprey Education Officer, who will be taking us on a trip to Gambia and Senegal, and how he visited there to get to see the Ospreys over there. So that's a really exciting talk. So please head to our website. All the talks are on there, and you can book your place on there. And we hope to see you all again soon. Thanks again, Abby, and have a good night, everybody, and we'll see you soon.
Yeah, thank you very much, everyone.
Thanks.